Water has always been one of the most fascinating forces in the world of Pokemon. Across every region, rivers, lakes, and seas are filled with creatures that are tied to this element. Some of them have become legendary in their own right, like the mighty Kyogre or the towering Gyarados, while others are beloved for their beauty, their power, or the sense of wonder they bring to trainers. But not every creature that swims in the waves or drifts along the shore is impressive. For every graceful Lapras or terrifying Sharpedo, there are Pokemon that, frankly, have disappointed trainers for years. Some are weak, others are simply strange, and a few are remembered less for what they can do and more for how little they bring to a battle. This is not a story of glory or victory. It is not about champions or legendary battles. Instead, it is about the forgotten, the frustrating, and the failures of the water-type world. We will look at creatures that were never meant to win championships, yet still became infamous in their own ways. And along the way, we will see how even these so-called failures play a role in making the Pokemon universe feel complete. So settle in, close your eyes, and let the story carry you like a raft drifting along a quiet current. Few Pokemon have been mocked as relentlessly as Magikarp. This little orange fish is known everywhere for one thing: its inability to fight. Its most iconic move, Splash, does nothing at all, leaving trainers staring at the screen in disbelief as it bounces uselessly again and again. For many, their first fishing trip ended not with excitement, but with this helpless creature flopping about, unable to contribute to a single battle. And yet, it became iconic precisely because of how laughably weak it is. What makes the orange fish so interesting is that its entire identity is built around potential rather than present power. It offers nothing when caught, but if given time, it evolves into one of the most terrifying monsters in the sea. Still, in its base form, it remains the punchline of the Pokemon world, a swimmer that inspires groans rather than cheers. Generations later, another weakling joined the ranks: Phoebus. Unlike Magikarp, which is found everywhere with a simple rod, this ragged, dull-scaled fish is notoriously rare. Trainers often spend hours scouring lakes and rivers, sometimes only to find a single one hiding on a specific tile. And after all that effort, what did they get? A pitiful Pokemon that fainted at the slightest tap. Its frail body and sad appearance made it one of the most underwhelming catches imaginable. Yet, just like the orange splash of disappointment, this weakling hides an incredible secret. With enough care and the right conditions, it evolves into Milotic, a creature of elegance and power that is loved across the entire franchise. The contrast between the ragged fish and its majestic evolution is one of the most dramatic transformations in the series. Still, before reaching that form, Phoebus stands as one of the most frustrating water types ever designed. Then there is Wishy-Washy, a Pokemon that represents two extremes. On its own, in what is called its solo form, it is tiny and helpless, one of the weakest creatures in the sea. But when gathered into a school, it transforms into a massive powerhouse, capable of taking on foes many times its size. This duality makes it unique a Pokemon that shifts from laughably frail to frighteningly strong depending on its circumstances. The problem is that players spend much of their early experience with it in the solo state, where it can barely survive in battle. Placed together, these three are united by the same theme: weakness that overshadows everything else. Magikarp flops helplessly until it finally evolves. Phoebus looks pitiful and offers nothing until transformed through patience and care. and Wishy-Washy exists in two realities, but spends much of its time in the form that trainers find nearly useless. Each of them eventually redeems itself through evolution, transformation, or sheer surprise, but in their base states, they are some of the most mocked and frustrating water types of all time. Imagine them drifting in the current. The orange fish splashes aimlessly, offering only comedy. The ragged one swims weakly, almost blending into the shadows, forgotten until given the chance to shine. And the tiny loner flickers in and out of its helpless form, always reminding players just how frail it can be. These are the starting points of our journey, three symbols of weakness, three reminders that not every creature in the water is destined for greatness. On the rocky shores of Kanto, there is a small crab Pokémon that scuttles along the sand, snapping its oversized claws with surprising force. At first glance, it looks like it should be a reliable fighter. Its pincers are large and sharp, capable of crushing shells and cracking stones. Trainers encountering it for the first time often imagine it as a sturdy companion, one that could pinch its way through battles with ease. Yet when put to the test, the little crab reveals its flaws quickly. Its defenses are fragile, its health is low, and while its attack power is decent, it rarely has the durability to make use of it. A creature that looks fierce in design is, in practice, one of the weaker catches along the shoreline. Even when it evolves, the improvements feel underwhelming. The larger form, Kingler, boasts impressive strength on paper, but suffers from the same problems. It is slow, frail, and limited in its moves. Many trainers who tried to raise the crab family eventually abandoned it in favor of sturdier water types with more balanced abilities. What should have been a powerful crustacean ends up as a disappointment, remembered less for its victories and more for how quickly it faints when put under pressure. Moving from rocky beaches to icy waters, we find another of Kanto's early water types, seal. Unlike the crab, this smooth white-bodied creature exudes charm rather than ferocity. Its rounded head, gentle eyes, and playful nature made it a favorite in the anime, where it was often shown bobbing happily in pools or sliding across frozen surfaces. Yet beneath the cuteness lies one of the most lackluster performers in battle. Its stats are spread thin, leaving it unable to excel at anything. Too slow to outspeed opponents, too weak to deal significant damage, and too fragile to take many hits, it quickly falls behind as a trainer's journey progresses. Seal's main strength lies in its potential evolution, but even that proves to be another case of wasted opportunity. Dugong, the larger and sleeker form of seal, looks the part of a majestic sea lion. Its snow-white body glides through the water with elegance, and the ice and water typing suggests a unique role that could combine offensive variety with defensive utility. But the reality is more disappointing. Its stats remain painfully average, leaving it outclassed by nearly every other ice type or water type competitor. It is not fast enough to threaten opponents, not strong enough to sweep, and not bulky enough to stall. Its weaknesses pile up, making it an unreliable choice for any serious team. In competitive play, Dugong has been almost invisible, overshadowed by Lapras, Cloyster, and later generations of bulky water types that perform its job far better. In casual play, trainers may try it out for novelty, but it rarely stays on a team for long. For a creature with such an elegant design, its lack of usefulness makes it one of the most disappointing evolutions in the first generation. When viewed together, the crab, the playful seal, and the sea lion represent three different shades of underwhelming design. The crab looks threatening but crumbles under pressure. The small white seal charms with its appearance but collapses in battle, and the larger evolution appears majestic but fails to deliver the power expected of its form. Each had the potential to stand alongside the great water types of their time, but instead they became reminders that not every design translates into effectiveness. There is also a narrative sense of letdown tied to them. When trainers catch a crab on the shore, they expect a strong, physical attacker. When they raise a seal, they expect it to blossom into a graceful, icy powerhouse. When they finally train Dugong, they expect it to hold its own in the late game. In every case, the reality falls short of the promise. These are Pokemon that set expectations high and then fail to meet them, creating disappointment that lingers long after they are boxed or released. Still, there is a quiet place for them in the ecosystem of the Pokemon world. The crab scuttles across rocks, a part of the shoreline food chain. The playful seal brings life and movement to frigid seas, its barks echoing across icy caves. The sea lion glides through snowy waters, a gentle giant rather than a fierce warrior. They may not be champions, but they help create the illusion of a living, breathing world filled not only with heroes, but with ordinary creatures simply trying to survive. Imagine the scene along the coast. The crab moves sideways across the sand, raising its claw high, trying to look fierce as the tide rolls in. The seal surfaces in a cold pool, blinking its wide eyes and blowing a small spray of mist into the air. The sea lion dives beneath the ice, its sleek body cutting through the water in graceful arcs, only to surface again with a quiet, echoing cry. Together, they form a trio of underwhelming companions, creatures that never lived up to their designs, but still contribute to the quiet rhythm of the sea. In the grand story of Pokémon, not every water type is destined to be powerful. Some exist to frustrate trainers, some to be quickly forgotten, and some to linger as symbols of wasted potential. Krabby, Seal, and Dugong embody all three of these roles. They are not remembered as legends, nor are they completely useless, but in the vast ocean of water types, they are certainly among the most disappointing. Out on the open waters of Kanto, trainers quickly discover that traveling by sea can be an exhausting experience. Step after step, encounter after encounter, the same jellyfish-like figure rises again and again from the waves. Its translucent body drifts just below the surface, while long tendrils sway with the current, ready to lash out with stings of poison. At first, its appearance can be unsettling, a creature large enough to tower above small boats, with glowing red orbs on its head that make it look almost alien. For many, it became a symbol of the sea itself, ever-present and unavoidable. Yet despite its ominous design, this Pokémon has always struggled to be as impressive in battle as it is in looks. Tentacruel, as it is known, occupies an awkward place. Its speed is solid, and its special defense is respectable, but everything else leaves much to be desired. It cannot hit hard enough to threaten serious opponents, and it cannot take the kind of punishment that true tanks can endure. What makes it worse is how common it is. Trainers exploring Kanto's waters sometimes face it a dozen times in a single stretch of ocean, turning it from a potentially interesting encounter into an annoyance. In the anime, it once appeared as a destructive giant, capable of demolishing entire buildings, but in the games, it never lives up to that kind of power. Instead, it lingers in memory more as a nuisance than as a trusted teammate. If Tentacruel represents frustration through overexposure, the next Pokémon demonstrates the opposite problem, irrelevance. Found gliding through lakes and rivers, Goldeen is a small orange fish with a single horn sprouting from its forehead. Its design carries a gentle elegance, with flowing fins that make it appear almost graceful. In contests or on stage, it might be admired for its beauty, but in battle, it has almost nothing to offer. Its stats are weak across the board, too slow to outspeed rivals, too fragile to absorb attacks, and too limited in move pool to provide variety. For many players, Goldeen was one of those creatures you catch once, simply to register in the Pokédex, and then never use again. Even in its evolved form, Seeking, the line remained forgettable, unable to compete with the stronger water types that surrounded it. The most notable thing Goldeen ever contributed to the series was its role in the Super Smash Bros. Games, where it became a running gag when summoned from a Pokeball. It does nothing but flop helplessly on the ground. In a way, that perfectly captured how players already felt about it: harmless, unimpressive, and entirely forgettable. If Goldeen is remembered for doing nothing, then the deep-sea predator known as Huntail is remembered for not living up to its promise. Evolving from Clamperl when traded with a special item, it is one of two possible forms, the counterpart to the more elegant Gorbis. Huntail's appearance is menacing, with sharp teeth, a long eel-like body, and a glare that suggests danger lurking in the abyss. Trainers often go through significant effort to obtain it, scouring the seas for the necessary item and then arranging a trade. The payoff, unfortunately, rarely matches the effort. In battle, Huntail is painfully average. Its stats sit in the middle of the spectrum, nothing terrible, but nothing particularly good either. Its attack is decent, but not high enough to threaten serious opponents. Its speed is lacking, making it easy prey for faster foes. Its move pool is shallow, leaving few options to surprise an enemy. Trainers who spent hours tracking down the items and conditions to evolve, Clamperl often walked away disappointed. Instead of a terrifying predator, they received a middling Pokémon that barely stood above the ocean's weakest swimmers. Taken together, these three creatures illustrate different ways that water types can fall short. Tentacruel looks intimidating, but never truly delivers on its potential. Goldeen is so unimpressive that it has become a joke across the franchise. Huntail seems designed to be fierce, but ends up too mediocre to justify the effort it takes to acquire. Each represents a kind of failure, one through frustration, one through irrelevance, and one through unmet expectations. Picture them drifting in the ocean. Tentacruel's tendrils stretch across the water, glowing red eyes fixed forward, but instead of fear, it inspires sighs from weary trainers. Goldeen moves in lazy circles, its horn catching the sunlight for a moment before it fades back into obscurity. Huntail lurks deeper down, jaws opening wide, but its bite never matches the menace of its form. These three swim in different waters, yet all share the same fate. Remembered less for their power, and more for their failure to leave a mark. And so, as the current carries you further into this story, you pass by these shapes in the sea: the jellyfish too common to be loved, the horned fish too weak to be useful, and the deep-sea predator that was never as dangerous as it looked. They fade behind you, blending into the waves, a trio of disappointments in a world otherwise filled with wonder. In the warm, shallow waters of Johto, there drifts a Pokémon that looks more like a piece of coral than a living creature. With pink branches reaching upward and a cheerful expression, Corsola seems friendly, even comforting. It decorates the reefs like a living ornament, brightening the seafloor with its presence. Yet for trainers who decided to bring it into battle, the charm fades quickly. Its stats are spread thin across every category, leaving it unable to excel in any role. It cannot deal enough damage to be a threat, it cannot withstand powerful attacks, and it lacks the speed to strike first. Against nearly any opponent, it folds with little resistance. Over time, Corsola became a symbol of wasted potential. A coral Pokemon could have been a powerful defensive wall or a creative support, but instead, it was destined to be one of the weakest water types in existence. Later generations gave it a haunting new life in the form of a regional variant, one that was ghostly and unsettling, but the original pink version never escaped its reputation. To this day, it remains a creature loved for its cuteness, but forgotten for its usefulness. Not far from the coral reefs of Kanto, another Pokemon dwells in the sea, a clam-like creature known as Shelder. With its tongue hanging out and its small body tucked inside a tough shell, it is both silly and endearing. In its base form, though, it is far from threatening. Its defense is sturdy, but everything else leaves much to be desired. Offensively, it cannot do much. Speed-wise, it rarely outspeeds anything, and as a result, it is often seen as nothing more than a stepping stone. That stepping stone, however, leads to something much greater. When exposed to a water stone, Shelder evolves into Cloyster, one of the most durable and dangerous water types of the first generation. Cloyster became known for its incredible defense and its ability to unleash devastating attacks. But while the evolution is respected, the small clam that comes before it is rarely remembered with the same fondness. Few trainers ever keep it unevolved because it serves no purpose in that state. On its own, it is one of the weakest catches in the sea. And then there is Tentacool, the smaller counterpart to the jellyfish we encountered earlier. This creature is infamous in the Pokemon community, not because of its strength, but because of its sheer abundance. Step into the waters of Kanto, and it is almost impossible not to encounter it again and again. Trainers traveling across the region's ocean routes often see Tentacool so frequently that it becomes synonymous with frustration. In battle, it offers very little. Its stats are poor, its attacks are weak, and it faints quickly under pressure. Like its evolved form, it can use poison moves, but without the bulk or speed to support them, those moves rarely make an impact. In the early games, Tentacool was so common that it became a running joke among fans. You might fish, surf, or sail anywhere in Kanto's waters, and no matter what you did, you would be forced into endless battles with this jellyfish. For many, it is not remembered as a Pokemon they loved or hated, only as an obstacle they had to repeatedly endure. Placed side by side, Corsola, Shelder, and Tentacool represent three different types of disappointment. Corsola is the one that looks cute, but offers nothing of value. Shelder is the one that exists only to evolve, never to shine on its own, and Tentacool is the one that haunts trainers with endless encounters, turning excitement into annoyance. Each one has a role in the world, but in the eyes of players, that role is not one of greatness. It is one of frustration, mediocrity, or forgettability. Picture them now in the sea. Corsola stands quietly on the reef, its pink branches swaying with the tide, colorful but powerless. Shelder clings to a rock, tongue lolling, shell snapping shut with little real strength. Tentacool drifts aimlessly through the surf, translucent body glowing faintly in the light, destined to appear again and again as trainers sigh in exhaustion. They are the quiet companions of the ocean, always present, always part of the ecosystem, but rarely remembered with affection. And so, as you drift further along the current, these three fade behind you, They are not fierce predators or legendary guardians. They are simply weak, common, or forgettable creatures filling the background of the Pokémon world. Without them, the seas might feel emptier, but with them, the seas feel frustrating, ordinary, and sometimes even dull. In their own way, that makes them perfect examples of the worst, water types, for they remind us that not every creature in the ocean is meant to impress. In the warm seas of Hoenn, there swims a Pokémon shaped like a small, pink heart. Known as Lovedisk, it was designed to embody affection and sweetness, a creature that drifts through the currents as if spreading love wherever it goes. Its simple design makes it memorable. One glance is enough to recognize it, but in the world of battles, it is among the most infamous disappointments ever created. With some of the lowest stats of any water type, it cannot attack effectively, cannot endure damage, and cannot provide support. Trainers who once hoped that this heart-shaped fish might have some hidden strength soon learned that it was nearly useless in combat. The one role it did gain was outside of battles, often found carrying heart scales, items used to reteach forgotten moves. It became little more than a farming target. Trainers did not seek it out because they wanted it on their team, but because they needed what it carried. Over time, this reputation stuck. Lovedisk became less a Pokémon and more a tool, valued for what it provided rather than for what it was. Its cuteness ensured it was not hated, but it never earned respect either. It drifted into the history of Pokémon as one of the weakest creatures of all time, a fish that symbolizes style without substance. In Sinnoh, a new line of water types appeared, beginning with a delicate fish called Finneon. Its fins shimmer like butterfly wings, glowing in the sunlight that filters down through the water. Graceful and elegant, it was clearly designed to be admired for its beauty. Yet, as with Lovedisk, appearances can be deceiving. Its stats are painfully average, leaving it unable to serve a role in serious battles. Trainers might have been charmed by its glowing patterns at first, but the reality quickly sank, and Finneon could not compete with the many stronger water types in Sinnoh. The disappointment deepened when Finneon evolved. Lumineon, the larger form, stretches out those shimmering fins, becoming sleek and smooth, almost angelic in design. At a glance, it appears to be a worthy upgrade, elegant, beautiful, and refined, but when placed into battle, the story remained the same: mediocre stats across the board, weak offenses, fragile defenses, and nothing that made it stand out in a region filled with powerhouses like Gyarados, Empoleon, and Milotic. The elegant form was destined to be forgotten. In competitive circles, Lumineon quickly sank to the bottom tiers. In casual play, most trainers abandoned it once they realized its limitations. Its only real contribution was aesthetic, a reminder that Pokémon can be beautiful, but beauty does not win battles. Some described it as a filler fish, a creature added to the roster simply to fill space, not to inspire or impress. Over time, it has become one of the most overlooked water types of all time. When grouped together, Lovedisk, Finneon, and Lumineon highlight a recurring theme: beauty without strength. The heart-shaped fish is adorable but empty, offering nothing beyond a farming tool. The butterfly-like swimmer glimmers in the light but cannot contribute to a battle, and its evolved form, though graceful, is destined to be overshadowed by stronger water types. Each one is pleasant to look at, but none of them provide a reason to be chosen when so many others are available. Picture them beneath the surface. Lovedisk drifts gently, its heart-shaped body glowing pink as it floats quietly in the current, offering no threat, only a symbol of affection. Finneon flutters by like a butterfly of the sea, fins sparkling as it dances in the light, admired for a moment before it vanishes into irrelevance. And Luminion glides behind, sleek and elegant, shimmering like silk in the water, but leaving no lasting impression. They move together as a trio of beauty without power, fragile ornaments in an ocean where survival demands strength. There is a quiet sadness in their story. Trainers did not want to dislike them. Their designs are charming, even lovable, but when compared to others, they fall so far behind that they are forgotten. They exist not as champions, not as allies, but as background creatures, filling the seas with elegance, but no substance. And in a way, that makes them some of the purest examples of the worst water types. They are not failures of design, but failures of balance, created to be admired, but never to be relied upon. As the tide pulls you further into this tale, imagine them fading into the background of the reef, drifting quietly, unnoticed. The heart-shaped one flutters away, carrying with it nothing but a token item. The butterfly-finned fish glimmers for a moment, then disappears. The larger, sleeker form follows, graceful but forgettable. Together, they remind us that in the world of Pokémon, not everything that looks beautiful has the strength to endure. Sometimes, beauty alone is all they have. In the rivers of Johto, there lives a tiny silver fish with a design unlike any other. At first glance, Remoraid appears sharp and sleek, its mouth shaped like the barrel of a gun. It has the look of a creature that should be fast and dangerous, spitting water with precision like bullets. The concept is clever, almost futuristic, compared to many of the simpler designs of its generation, and yet the reality is very different. Despite its weapon-like appearance, this little fish is frail, weak, and almost useless in a fight. Its defenses are practically non-existent, and its offensive power, while hinted at in its design, falls far short in practice. The one thing that kept Remoraid from being completely forgotten is what it becomes. From this unimpressive little fish emerges Octillery, a strange, cannon-like octopus with a completely different shape and style. It is one of the most dramatic transformations in the series, going from a tiny, gun-shaped fish to a stocky, eight-legged creature. But this doesn't change the fact that its starting point is one of the weakest and most disappointing water types available. Most trainers catch it not because they want to use it in its base form, but because they are curious about its unusual evolution. On its own, the little fish remains among the least impactful creatures in the water. Far deeper below the waves, in the region of Hoenn, we find another small Pokémon hidden in its shell, Clamperl. This tiny bivalve has an adorable design, with its pearl-like body tucked inside hard armor. At first glance, it seems like it could be a strong defensive wall, its shell clamped tightly shut to resist any attack. But once again, appearances are misleading. While it has decent defense, everything else about it is weak. It is far too slow to get the first move, far too fragile to handle repeated hits, and its move pool is tiny. Trainers who catch one quickly discover that it is essentially useless in its base form. What makes Clamperl interesting is not the creature itself, but what it can become. Through the use of special evolutionary items, it has two different paths. With one item, it evolves into Huntail, a deep-sea predator with sharp teeth and a menacing design. With another, it becomes Gorbis, a slender, elegant, eel-like Pokémon. Both are more powerful than Clamperl, and both are rare and intriguing evolutions. But the clam itself, it exists only as a stepping stone, one of the most forgettable water types, until it finally changes into something more. The third member of this part is Quillfish, a pufferfish covered in spikes, introduced in Johto alongside Remoraid. On paper, it should have been dangerous. It has a round body full of poisonous barbs, the ability to inflate itself into a spiny ball, and a design that screams hazard. It looks like it should be able to deter attackers, to sting opponents that dare to approach, yet in battle, it never lived up to that promise. Its stats are painfully average, leaving it too weak to hit hard and too fragile to stall. Its typing gave it some utility, but not enough to keep up with stronger water types. For years, Quillfish existed in a strange limbo. It wasn't completely useless. It could poison foes, set up spikes, and fill niche roles, but it was never strong enough to be remembered as reliable. Most players simply passed it over in favor of more powerful water types, leaving it forgotten. In time, a regional variant gave it new purpose, but the original version remains one of the least memorable fish in the franchise, a design that looked threatening but was never taken seriously. When viewed together, Remoraid, Clamperl, and Quillfish represent different faces of disappointment. One is fragile despite a dangerous design. One is useless until it evolves, and even then remembered only for its potential paths. And one looks threatening, but never earns the respect its appearance demands. Each of them serves as a reminder that clever concepts or intimidating designs don't always translate into power. Sometimes, a Pokémon is destined to remain weak, overlooked, or overshadowed. Imagine them drifting through the water together. The silver fish spits a weak stream that falls short of its target, darting nervously around larger predators. The clam sits quietly on the seafloor, shell clamped tight, waiting for the chance to evolve into something more. And the pufferfish bobs nearby, inflating itself and bristling with spikes, but never truly scaring off the dangers that surround it. They are all small, all unimpressive in battle, yet each one still plays its part in shaping the underwater world. As the tide pulls forward, these three fade into the shadows of the ocean. They are not champions, not fan favorites, but they still exist in the background of the seas, fragile, forgettable, and frustrating, yet important in their own quiet way. They are the ones that remind us that for every powerhouse, there are dozens of weaker creatures drifting by, waiting to be noticed, but rarely remembered. Among the many ordinary fish that swim in the Pokémon world, few are remembered as vividly, yet as weakly as Seeking. It is the evolved form of Goldeen, and while its appearance is more striking, larger body, bold orange and white markings, and an impressive horn, the strength behind that design never truly matched the image. In the early games, players would often catch it expecting a solid mid-tier water type, something to carry them through battles at sea. But Seeking never managed to rise above mediocrity. Its stats are spread thin, and while it does have decent attack power, it is held back by its lack of speed and overall fragility. Despite being one of the earliest fish Pokémon, its biggest claim to fame came outside of the main games. In competitive circles, it was rarely seen, often overshadowed by far stronger water types like Starmie, Gyarados, or Lapras. And among the community, Seeking became the punchline of one of the earliest internet memes, a joke that turned its name into a cry of mock anger, forever cementing it as a symbol of disappointment. To this day, the name sparks recognition, but rarely respect. From Kanto's underwhelming horned fish, we move to the Unova region, where another forgettable water type made its debut. Basculin was introduced as a filler Pokémon, a common catch in rivers and lakes. Its sharp fins, aggressive expression, and constant scowl suggest a dangerous predator, but in truth, it offered almost nothing of value to trainers. Its stats are balanced but unimpressive, leaving it unable to make an impact in battle. Neither bulky nor fast, neither powerful nor supportive, it simply exists. What made Basculin especially forgettable was how unremarkable it was compared to other water types available in the same region. When placed alongside stalwarts like Samurott or Caracosta, the angry little fish felt unnecessary, as if it were only designed to fill space in the Pokédex. Trainers might have caught it early on, but it rarely stayed on their teams. For many, it became little more than a name in the Pokédex, quickly boxed and never thought of again. It wasn't until many years later, when it gained a regional form, that Basculin finally saw some attention. But the original version remains one of the most forgotten water types in the entire franchise. If Seeking and Basculin represent weakness through mediocrity, the last of this group represents failure through design. Bruxish, introduced in the Alola region, is one of the strangest looking Pokémon ever created. With garish colors, a wide grin full of teeth, and fins that resemble psychedelic patterns, it has one of the most polarizing appearances in the entire series. Some trainers found it bizarrely charming, while most considered it downright ugly. Unfortunately, its performance in battle did nothing to redeem its strange looks. Despite having access to a unique combination of abilities and moves, it never rose to relevance. Its defenses were too low to survive long. Its speed was mediocre, and its offensive potential was outclassed by countless other water types. The bright colors and sharp teeth suggested something wild and dangerous, but in practice, it was neither strong nor popular. Instead, Bruxish became one of the least liked Pokémon of its generation, both because of its appearance and because of how little it brought to the table. These three Pokémon, the meme-ridden Seeking, the filler fish Basculin, and the polarizing Bruxish, illustrate yet another side of disappointment among water types. They are not completely useless like Magikarp or Lovedisk, but they are defined by mediocrity, forgettability, and controversy. They fail to inspire confidence, and though they are part of the ecosystem, they rarely inspire affection. Picture them moving through the current. Seeking swims in steady circles, its horn gleaming faintly, remembered more for a joke than for power. Basculin darts aggressively through a river, eyes glaring, but no trainer stops to admire it. And Bruxish glides through tropical waters, teeth bared in a wide grin, colors flashing brightly, but instead of awe, it inspires discomfort. Each one has a role in its home region, but none stand out as creatures players look back on fondly. Together, they capture the idea that not all water types are designed to impress. Some are destined to be forgotten, some are destined to be laughed at, and some are destined to be disliked. Whether through mediocrity, overexposure, or bizarre design, these three will always drift near the bottom of the list, reminders that even in a vast ocean, not every swimmer will shine. In the deep seas of Hoenn, the delicate form of Gorbis drifts with the current. At first glance, it seems almost angelic, a slender pink body with flowing fins that trail behind it like ribbons, a design full of elegance and beauty. It was meant to serve as the counterpart to Huntail, the more feral and intimidating branch of Clamperl's evolutionary line. Where one was designed to look fierce, the other was meant to embody grace. But beauty alone does not win battles, and Gorbis quickly revealed itself as one of the weakest deep-sea evolutions in the franchise. Its stats were unimpressive, hovering in that awkward middle ground where it could not compete with stronger water types. Offensively, it had a few tricks, but not enough to make it a consistent threat. Defensively, it was far too frail to survive for long, and in competitive play, it found itself ignored, constantly overshadowed by sturdier choices. Even its unusual design failed to give it staying power among fans. While admired by some for its elegance, it was largely forgotten in favor of stronger, more useful Pokémon. In the end, Gorbis became yet another case of wasted potential, an evolution that looked good on paper, but never lived up to its appearance. From Hoenn Seas, we move to a mythical Pokémon with one of the strangest reputations of all. Phione, despite being classified as a mythical, is among the weakest of its kind. Most mythical Pokémon creatures like Mew, Celebi, or Jirachi are known for their balance, utility, and strength. Phione, however, has none of that. With mediocre stats across the board, it is so underwhelming that many fans argue it should not even hold mythical status at all. Its only real claim to fame is that it comes from breeding Manaphy, a unique mechanic that made it feel special at first. But once trainers actually used it, the disappointment became clear. Phione is fragile, underpowered, and forgettable. While its design is cute, a small blue body with a playful charm, it offers almost nothing in serious battles. Even in casual play, most trainers quickly box it in favor of nearly any other water type. Over time, it has become something of a joke among the community, the mythical that feels like it should never have been mythical at all. For a creature that should carry an aura of mystery and power, it remains one of the most underwhelming Pokémon ever created. And then we have Slowpoke, one of the most iconic yet frustrating water types introduced in Kanto. With its vacant stare, round body, and sluggish movements, it embodies laziness and stillness more than battle readiness. At first, its slow speed and absent-minded look made it seem like comic relief, and that impression stuck. But behind the humor lies the truth. Slowpoke is one of the weakest and most frustrating Pokémon to actually use in battle. Its stats are heavily weighted toward bulk, but its lack of speed is crippling. In nearly every encounter, it moves last, often fainting before it can act. While it does have access to useful moves and can evolve into stronger forms, like Slowbro or Slowking, its base form is little more than a punching bag. For trainers who tried to raise it early on, the experience was often painful. Waiting for such a slow and fragile Pokémon to finally evolve felt more like a chore than a reward. Taken together, Gorbis, Phione, and Slowpoke form an unusual trio of disappointment. One is elegant but frail, all appearance with little substance. One is mythical in name but weak in reality, remembered more as a curiosity than a powerhouse. And the last is iconic but frustrating, a creature designed to embody slowness that ends up embodying weakness instead. Each of them plays an important role in the world of Pokémon. The deep-sea eel, the mythical offspring, the dopey shoreline dweller, but none are remembered for their strength. Picture them in your mind's eye. Gorbis drifts silently in the deep, its fins flowing like silk, beautiful but fragile, forgotten as stronger predators swim by. Phione bobs playfully near the surface, a smile on its face, but its small size and weakness make it little more than a novelty. And Slowpoke lies motionless on the riverbank, staring blankly at the horizon, too sluggish to react as the world moves on around it. They are not champions of the sea, but symbols of how disappointment can take many forms: elegance without power, mythical without might, and laziness without reward. As the story drifts forward, these three fade back into the current, leaving behind the impression of what could have been. They are reminders that not every creature that looks beautiful, rare, or iconic will live up to its promise. In the vast ocean of water types, they sink toward the bottom, not because they are hated, but because they never found the strength to rise. When talking about water types that never quite reach the level they seem destined for, the line beginning with Slowpoke stands out as one of the clearest examples. The first evolution, Slowbro, is the result of a Shelder biting onto its tail, a strange bit of lore that set it apart from other Pokémon right away. With this odd symbiosis, it gained new strength and became bulkier than its base form, but even with the added defense, it remained painfully slow. Trainers who used it often found themselves frustrated. It could take a few hits, yes, but it rarely struck first, and battles dragged on endlessly because of its sluggish pace. Over time, Slowbro developed a reputation as a wall that never quite lived up to its role. Other defensive water types did its job better. Lapras, Suicune, and even Vaporeon could stall, heal, or support far more effectively. The dopey pink creature had personality, and fans loved it in the anime for its goofy charm, but in-game, its usefulness was always limited. It was not completely without value, but compared to stronger and faster water types, it rarely justified a spot on a serious team. Where Slowbro disappointed by being too sluggish, its counterpart Slowking offered an alternative. This evolution came about not through a Shelder biting its tail, but through one clamping onto its head, turning the dopey pink body into something that was meant to be wise. With a shell crown and a regal bearing, Slowking was presented as a more intelligent version of its cousin, one that could think quickly and act strategically. In the anime, it was even able to speak human language, cementing its status as a Pokémon of wisdom. Yet once again, the idea was stronger than the execution. In the games, Slowking suffers from many of the same problems as Slowbro. It is too slow, too easily outpaced, and while it does have decent special attack and special defense, it never rises above mediocrity. Trainers who expected it to be the smarter, more powerful counterpart often walked away disappointed. Instead of being a game-changing evolution, it became just another option that offered little more than novelty. Both Slowbro and Slowking occupy that awkward space of being interesting in concept, beloved in personality, but forgettable in actual battle. Moving from the shores of Johto to the muddy swamps of Unova, another disappointing water type makes its entrance. Palpitoad, the middle evolution of the Tympole line, is one of those creatures that feels like filler, something trainers must endure on the way to something better. Its design is strange, with bulbous growths on its head and a body that looks perpetually awkward. It is neither cute like Tympole nor intimidating like Seismitoad. Instead, it is simply there, filling out the evolutionary line without bringing anything unique to the table. In battle, Palpitoad is weak, its stats are unimpressive, and its moveset offers little beyond the basics. Trainers who catch one quickly learn that it cannot hold its own in serious fights. Its only real purpose is to evolve into its final form, which at least has some competitive utility. But while in this middle stage, Palpitoad represents some of the most forgettable moments of a journey. It is the kind of Pokémon that players rarely talk about years later because it leaves so little impression. Together, Slowbro, Slowking, and Palpitoad illustrate three very different shades of disappointment. Slowbro has the bulk, but wastes it with its unbearable speed. Slowking has the design of a wise king, but fails to deliver the strength to match that image. And Palpitoad is simply bland, a middle form that exists only to be endured Each of them had potential. One could have been a reliable wall, one could have been a unique special attacker, and one could have been a creative midpoint in its line. Instead, all three ended up as forgettable entries in the long list of water types. Picture them in their natural habitats. Slowbro sits idly on the beach, staring at the waves as the shell on its tail refuses to let go. Slowking gazes thoughtfully at the horizon, crown gleaming in the sun, but behind the regal image lies mediocrity. Palpitoad squats in the mud, croaking weakly, its awkward body blending into the swamp without leaving much of a mark. They exist, they fill the seas and rivers, but they do not inspire awe. As the tide of this story carries onward, these three fade into the background. They are not the weakest of the weak, nor the most mocked, but they are creatures that failed to live up to their promise. In a world where so many water types are iconic, powerful, or beloved, Slowbro, Slowking, and Palpitoad stand out mostly for how little they stand out at all. In the wetlands of Unova, trainers eventually come across a large, squat amphibian with warty skin and circular growths that glow faintly on its body. Known as Seismitoad, this creature combines water and ground typing, which on paper seems like it should be powerful. Its design hints at strength, with wide arms, sturdy legs, and an imposing size that suggests it could dominate the swampy terrain it calls home. And yet, despite all of that promise, it remains one of the most underwhelming bulky water types in the franchise. Its stats are middling, failing to push it into relevance. It has some bulk, but not enough to withstand repeated punishment. It has some offensive power, but not enough to threaten serious opponents. And while its unique typing does give it advantages against certain foes, it never manages to make use of them effectively. Trainers who invested time into raising this amphibian often walked away disappointed, realizing that nearly every role it could fill was already done better by another Pokémon. Swampert, Quagsire, and Gastrodon each overshadowed it in one way or another, leaving Seismitoad to linger in the background, forgettable despite its unusual appearance. Moving from swamps to skies, the next disappointing water type takes the form of a small, blue duckling introduced in Unova. Ducklet is meant to be cute, waddling on land and flapping its tiny wings as it bobs in the water. Its design is charming in a simple way, like a cartoonish bird you might expect in a children's book. But in battle, it is one of the weakest birds ever created. Its stats are extremely low, leaving it fragile and powerless. Trainers who encountered it often ignored it, knowing that it offered little beyond novelty. While it can evolve, the duckling stage is one of the most forgettable water types, serving as little more than a stepping stone towards something more refined. That evolution is Swanna, a white swan with graceful wings and a long, elegant neck. At first, Swanna seems like it should soar. Its design suggests majesty and beauty, and as both a water and flying type, it carries the promise of versatility. Trainers may have expected it to become a sleek counterpart to Pelipper, or even a worthy rival to legendary birds, but in reality, Swanna never lived up to its design. Its stats remain mediocre, with enough speed to move first at times, but too little offensive or defensive presence to make an impact. It struggles to find a role in competitive play, where sturdier or stronger water types always push it aside. In casual play, Swanna can be a novelty, an elegant bird that looks impressive while flying across routes, but few trainers choose to keep it on their team long term. Its fragile body and limited move pool make it unreliable, leaving it forgotten among the dozens of other water types that overshadow it. Swanna embodies elegance without power, a creature that glides beautifully through the sky but fails to provide any reason to be remembered in battle. Together, Seismitoad, Ducklet, and Swanna represent three different forms of disappointment: the bulky amphibian that looks powerful but never performs, the duckling that is cute but useless, and the swan that promises majesty but delivers mediocrity. Each one carries potential in its design strength, charm, or elegance, but each falls short of delivering on that promise. They are the kind of Pokémon that fill the world with variety, but not with greatness. Picture them in their natural habitats. Seismitoad squats in the mud, glowing orbs pulsing faintly as it croaks, waiting for prey that never comes. Ducklet paddles along the surface of a quiet lake, flapping its small wings without grace, ignored by predators and trainers alike. And Swanna glides overhead, wings outstretched in the sunlight, beautiful for a moment, but fading quickly into irrelevance. They move in different worlds: swamp, pond, and sky, yet they are united by their failure to impress. As the current of this story drifts forward, these three fade into memory, much like they do in the games themselves. Rarely chosen, rarely celebrated, they are part of the background of the Pokémon world. They remind us that not every creature is destined to be strong or beloved. Some exist only as filler, to populate the world without leaving a lasting mark. And in the long history of water types, Seismitoad, Ducklet, and Swanna are destined to remain among the least memorable of them all. In the seas surrounding Unova, trainers sometimes come across a strange, ghostly jellyfish. With a round body, long trailing arms, and a soft, almost regal design, Frillish feels different from the typical water types encountered earlier in a journey. Its coloring varies depending on whether it is male or female, and its eerie yet gentle design makes it stand out. But as soon as battles begin, its weaknesses become clear. Its stats are low, its speed lacking, and its attacks far too weak to leave an impression. It has access to some useful moves, but it rarely has the power to use them effectively. For many trainers, Frillish became just another awkward, mid-stage Pokémon, something to catch for the Pokédex, but not to keep on a team. The disappointment continued with its evolution. Jellicent. This larger jellyfish is styled like royalty, with a billowing body that resembles a gown or a grand cloak, and a face adorned with a mustache or elegant lips, depending on its gender. On design alone, it feels like it should be a unique and memorable water type, especially with its ghost typing. Yet despite its intriguing look, Jellicent never became a powerhouse. Its stats are passable, but not enough to stand out in a game full of bulky water types that perform the same role better. It has niches, it can stall, it can block certain abilities, it can soak up some damage, but these roles never earned it lasting popularity. In competitive play, Jellicent floated on the edge of usefulness, sometimes appearing as a novelty, but never as a staple. In casual play, many trainers tried it out of curiosity, only to find themselves disappointed by its fragility and awkward moveset. It carried the promise of uniqueness, but never fully delivered. Its eerie design gave it personality, but personality alone could not carry it to greatness. Over time, Jellicent joined the long list of water types, remembered more for how they looked than for how they performed. From Unova's seas, we turn to the warm waters of the Unova and Alola regions, where another odd entry awaits Alamola. At first glance, it looks like it should be related to Lovedisk, sharing a similar heart-shaped body, fins that resemble hands, and the same soft pink coloring. Many fans even believed it was meant to be an evolution, finally giving Lovedisk some strength, but when it debuted, it was revealed to have no connection at all. Instead, it stood alone, another pink fish that ultimately disappointed. Unlike Luvedisc, Alamola has bulk. It is far sturdier, with a large pool of health that allows it to take repeated hits, but outside of this durability, it has little to offer. Its move pool is shallow, its offensive presence is non-existent, and it serves only as a defensive wall with limited utility. Trainers who wanted something more found themselves let down. It was bulky, yes, but not in a way that felt satisfying or memorable. Over time, Alamola became another Pokémon pushed to the side, overshadowed by other water types that could defend while also providing offensive or support roles. Taken together, Frillish, Jellicent, and Alamola form a trio that highlights wasted potential. One is a mid-stage jellyfish that feels too weak to matter. One is a royal-looking ghost that never found its place in serious battles. And one is a bulky pink fish that seemed like it should fix the mistakes of Luvedisc, but ended up being another forgettable entry in the long list of water types. Each of them had design elements that suggested greatness, regal shapes, bulk, or ghostly elegance, yet all of them remain near the bottom of the ocean in terms of actual impact. Picture them in their watery habitats. Frillish drifts lazily through the currents, its jelly-like body glowing faintly as it sways in the tide, too fragile to be remembered. Jellicent looms like a phantom queen or king, its body spreading like a cloak, regal in design but unimpressive in battle. And Alamola swims slowly along the reef, large and sturdy, its pink fins trailing behind it as it protects smaller fish, but never offering the excitement trainers hoped for. As the tide of this story carries you forward, these three fade into the dim blue of the sea. They are not useless, not entirely forgotten, but they are underwhelming, reminders of Pokémon that could have been far more than they are. In a world where water types are abundant and often celebrated, Frillish, Jellicent, and Alamola remain in the shadows, drifting as some of the most disappointing of their kind. When the Alola region was revealed, players were introduced to 3 new starter Pokémon. Among them was a small sea lion with a bright blue body and a playful nose that looked ready for circus tricks. Poplio was meant to embody joy and energy, splashing through the waves with a carefree spirit. Yet, from the very beginning, it faced backlash. Compared to the fierce, owl-like Rowlet and the fiery feline Litten, this cheerful sea lion felt underwhelming. Many fans dismissed it before they even touched the games, and that first impression stuck. In battle, Poplio is not entirely useless. It has a respectable move pool for a starter and can hold its own early in the game. But the problem was never just its stats, it was its image. Trainers wanted something that felt cool, something they could imagine leading their team with pride. Poplio, with its circus-like theme, struck many as silly instead of powerful. Even though it grows into something far more elegant later on, its reputation as the least popular starter lingered. It became one of the most infamous examples of how design alone can define a Pokémon's place in history, regardless of what it can actually do. When Poplio evolves, it becomes Brionne, a slightly taller form that looks like a performer in training, dressed in frills and moving with a dancer's energy. Yet while the design is charming, the middle stage suffers from the same problem that plagues so many second evolutions, being forgettable. It lacks the cuteness of its base form and the majesty of its final stage. Trainers who picked it often endured this middle step, eager to evolve it as quickly as possible. In battle, Brionne adds little new utility. It is serviceable, yes, but not memorable. This left Brionne in a difficult place. Too weak to be exciting, too awkward to be loved, and too temporary to be appreciated. It became one of those Pokemon you train through, not with the kind you endure rather than enjoy. In a franchise full of middle evolutions that suffer the same fate, Brion is often cited as one of the least impactful, remembered only because it sits between two more distinctive stages. From Alola's sea lion line to Galar's watery starter, we meet Sobble, another Pokemon that entered the spotlight under the weight of mixed reception. At first glance, Sobble is an adorable little lizard that hides in the water and cries at the slightest sign of danger. Its timid nature made it stand out, giving it more personality than many starters before it. But this same trait quickly turned it into the butt of jokes. Players mocked it for being weak and cowardly, comparing it unfavorably to its fellow starters, Grookey and Scorbunny. Where those two seemed bold and confident, Sobble seemed fragile and nervous. In practice, Sobble is not entirely bad as a starter. Like Poplio, it can perform reasonably well in the early game. But perception matters, and Sobble's constant tears left many trainers uninterested in raising it. Even its evolutions failed to save it from ridicule. Drizzile, the middle form, was criticized for its edgy appearance, and Inteleon, the final stage, was divisive for its lanky spy-like design. For many, Sobble never found its footing, remembered more for its sad demeanor than for its actual abilities. Taken together, Poplio, Brione, and Sobble show how water types can disappoint not just through weak stats, but through unpopular designs and reputations. Poplio was dismissed as silly, Brione was forgotten as filler, Sobble was mocked for being timid. Each of them carried potential, and each had defenders who loved them, but none escaped the weight of their reputations. In a series where starters are meant to be iconic and beloved, these three stand out as some of the least celebrated water-type starters of all time. Picture them in your mind. Poplio claps its flippers together and blows a bubble, cheerful but overlooked. Brione twirls on its fins, caught between awkwardness and grace, a dancer not yet ready for the stage. Sobble peeks out from behind a rock, eyes watery, trembling as the current ripples around it. Each one tries to find its place, yet each one has been marked more by criticism than by praise. As the story drifts onward, these three fade back into the ocean of memory. They are not useless, not without fans, but they remain among the most controversial and underappreciated water types in the long history of Pokémon. In a world where starters are meant to shine, they are reminders that even the chosen ones can sometimes be seen as the weakest of the group. In the Galar region, the timid little Sobble evolves into a new stage that is often remembered as one of the strangest middle evolutions in the history of starters. Drizzile sheds the wide-eyed innocence of its first form and takes on a moody, almost rebellious appearance. Its slim body, darker colors, and slouched posture make it look more like a withdrawn teenager than a confident fighter. While many middle evolutions suffer from being awkward or forgettable, Drizzile took this reputation to new heights. Its design was polarizing, leaving many players confused about the direction of the line. In battle, Drizzile offers little more than a stepping stone. Its stats are modest, not terrible, but not impressive either. It lacks the raw power or durability to hold its own against serious opponents, and in casual play, it adds little that Sobble couldn't already do. For trainers, the main motivation to keep it on the team was to evolve it into its final form. On its own, it was awkward to look at, uninspiring to use, and quickly became one of the least popular middle evolutions in recent memory. When Drizzile finally evolves, it becomes Inteleon, a tall, slender lizard styled as a secret agent. Its long body, sharp features, and finger gun poses were meant to give it a spy-like flair, making it stand out as one of the most distinctive starter evolutions in the series. Yet this dramatic transformation divided fans even further. Some appreciated the creativity, enjoying the uniqueness of a water type that embodied stealth and precision. Others felt it was too strange, too far removed from the cute little Sobble they started with, and too awkward to feel like a proper final evolution. In terms of battle performance, Inteleon never rose to the top of the charts. It has excellent speed and special attack, allowing it to strike quickly and hit hard when conditions were right. But its defenses are abysmal, leaving it vulnerable to nearly any counterattack. It could sweep teams in rare situations, but more often, it was taken down before it could truly shine. Trainers who hoped it might rival the likes of Greninja or Swampert were disappointed, realizing that Inteleon lacked the balance and versatility to reach that level of success. The reputation of Sobble's entire evolutionary line suffered because of these two stages. Drizzile was mocked for its awkward design, Inteleon criticized for being lanky and fragile. Together, they turned what could have been a beloved starter line into one of the most divisive in Pokémon history. Some fans defended their uniqueness, but the wider community often ranked them near the bottom of the list of water-type starters. Imagine them in their natural setting. Drizzile leans against a rock, arms crossed, eyes half-lidded, exuding the aura of a creature that doesn't want to be there. Its movements are slow and deliberate, not out of strength, but out of disinterest. Inteleon stands tall above the water, fingers pointed like pistols, trying to look confident, but its thin frame betrays its fragility. One feels awkward, the other feels over-designed, and both leave behind a sense of disappointment. Taken together, Drizzile and Inteleon represent one of the clearest examples of how design choices can define a Pokémon's legacy. Neither is useless, both have niches, both have strengths, but neither lived up to the lofty expectations placed upon starters. Where other final evolutions became icons of their generations, Inteleon became one of the least celebrated. Where other middle stages were awkward but tolerated, Drizzile became a symbol of how clumsy a design can feel. As the current of this story carries onward, these two fade into memory, reminders that even starter Pokémon creatures meant to be loved, trained, and remembered can sometimes miss the mark. Sobble's line, once full of potential, ended not with a triumph, but with a pair of evolutions that will forever be debated, defended by a few, but dismissed by many. The ocean in the world of Pokémon is vast, stretching endlessly across every region. It is home to some of the most legendary and beloved creatures ever created, powerful beasts like Kyogre, elegant companions like Lapras, and ferocious predators like Gyarados. But as this story has shown, for every giant of the sea, there are countless others who fall short. These are the ones who disappointed trainers, not because they were hated, but because they never quite lived up to their potential. They are the worst of the water types, a collection of creatures remembered not for glory, but for weakness, mediocrity, or forgettability. We began with the most infamous weaklings of them all, Magikarp, Feebas, and Wishiwashi. Each one is known for being nearly useless in its base form, whether it be splashing endlessly, fainting at the slightest touch, or struggling alone without its school. They embody the frustration of catching something that cannot fight, yet they also symbolize patience, the reward of evolution, transformation, or teamwork that makes them special in the long run. Even so, in their original states, they remain some of the weakest creatures to ever swim through the seas. From there, we explored the crab on Kanto's shores, the playful seal, and the majestic sea lion that never became as strong as it looked. Crabby promised strength with its claws, seal charmed with its cuteness, and dugong glided with elegance, but none of them could deliver the power needed to stand out. Then came the constant annoyance of Tentacruel, the forgettable Goldeen, and the deep-sea predator Huntail, each of them representing a different kind of letdown, overexposure, irrelevance, and unmet expectations. Corsola, Shelder, and Tentacool reminded us that sometimes disappointment lies in being filler. The pink coral was loved for looks but useless in combat. The clam was a stepping stone that mattered only for what it could become. And the jellyfish haunted players not with strength, but with its sheer abundance in the seas. Luvedisc, Finneon, and Luminion then showed us the danger of designs that focus on beauty without substance. Each one was elegant to look at, but none could perform, leaving them forgotten despite their charm. We dove deeper with Remoraid, Clamperl, and Quillfish, three Pokémon that looked dangerous or unique, but never amounted to much. The tiny fish that shoots water like a gun, the clam that waits to evolve, and the spiny pufferfish all stood out at first glance, but quickly faded into the background of the seas. Seeking, Basculin, and Bruxish highlighted another angle of disappointment, one remembered as a meme, one forgotten as filler, and one disliked for its strange design. As the story went on, Gorbis, Phione, and Slowpoke showed how elegance, rarity, and even iconic charm could still lead to mediocrity. Gorbis looked regal, but crumbled under pressure. Phione carried the title of a mythical but none of the power. And Slowpoke, while beloved for its blank stare, left trainers frustrated with its slowness. Slowbro and Slowking continued that theme, bulk without real strength, and wisdom without the power to back it up, while Palpatoad reminded us that some Pokémon exist simply as filler evolutions to pass through on the way to something else. Seismitoad, Ducklet, and Swanna took us into swamps, ponds, and skies, each one promising strength, cuteness, or elegance, but failing to stand out. The amphibian was overshadowed by better water types, the duckling was weak and forgettable, and the swan was graceful but mediocre. Then came Frillish, Jellicent, and Alamola, three designs that looked unique but never lived up to expectations. Ghostly jellies that struggled in battle, and a bulky pink fish that felt like a missed opportunity to redeem Luvedisc, but only added to the disappointment. Finally, we ended with the most recent starters, Poplio, Brionne, Sobble, Drizzile, and Inteleon. These were creatures meant to be beloved icons, chosen at the start of a journey, yet many trainers turned away from them. Poplio was dismissed as silly, Brionne forgotten in the middle, and Sobble mocked for its timid nature. Drizzile became a symbol of awkward design, and Inteleon divided fans with its lanky spy theme, fast and sharp on paper, but frail in practice. Together, they showed how even starters, the Pokémon meant to carry the most love and attention, can sometimes end up among the least celebrated. When placed side by side, all of these creatures form a strange tapestry. They are not the legends of the ocean, nor the titans of battle. They are the forgotten, the filler, the weak, and the mocked. Yet in their own way, they are important. Without Magikarp, there would be no story of transformation into Gyarados. Without Feebas, there would be no contrast with the beauty of Milotic. Without Tentacool flooding the seas, traveling across Kanto would feel emptier. Even the weakest, strangest, and most frustrating water types help shape the world, reminding us that not every encounter can be a triumph. And that brings us to the end of this journey through the most disappointing water types in the Pokemon world. Some were weak, some were awkward, and some were simply forgotten, but each had their place in shaping the series we know today. They remind us that not every design has to be powerful or popular to matter. Thank you for listening, and I hope this helped you relax and drift off.